All right, Gladiator 2. Man, I was super excited to see this movie. I mean, who wouldn't be? If you've seen the first one with Russell Crowe, you know what this movie is pretty much about. So basically, a man played by Paul Mescal, tragedy strikes his homeland after Rome invades, his wife is killed, and he becomes a slave who eventually becomes a gladiator, trying to win to earn his freedom and eventually gain revenge along the way. The movie has a really great cast leading the story up front. Like I said before, Paul Mescal is our leading man, but the movie also stars Joseph Quinn, Connie Nelson, Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal, others. A really stacked group for this film. Of particular note that I want to shout out, Denzel was absolutely the highlight of this movie. I think he's just having the most fun. I don't really get too much into what his character actually is in the film, but you can clearly see he's chewing up the scenes every time he's on screen. You kind of look forward to him showing up again, and that was my biggest takeaway. Denzel is absolutely awesome. The other star of the movie, clearly what most people are here for, and that is the fight scenes, the mano a mano in the Coliseum. And how are they? You know, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But you can talk about the fight scenes, you can talk about the stars, but you can't talk about Gladiator without mentioning Ridley Scott. And man, let me tell you what, there are tons of reasons to love Ridley Scott. But let me tell you why I love Ridley Scott. Whenever I watch one of his movies or one of his TV shows even, there's always this strong sense of detail, this strong sense of place. There's a blend of detail in the costume and the set design. The camera has this passive focus on what makes the world feel rough and gritty and sometimes just really unpleasant to be in. The dirt in the character's teeth. A storm so cold it makes you just want to wrap up in a blanket in the movie theater. A janky spaceship that feels like the galactic equivalent of a 1999 Jeep Grand Cherokee. All this matters. All this details and unpleasantness, all of it matters so that when the moments that need to hit hard come along, you are there. You are on the battlefield. You are on the spaceship. You are on the Coliseum battlegrounds with these characters. These details are what draw you in to the scene, and the action and the sense of place is so important. And why am I saying all this? I say it to get across why I had such a hard time getting into this movie for about the first half. The movie opens with this huge opening battle that has plenty of CGI, and it's not that the CGI is bad. It's so hard to compare that to the opening battle of the first Gladiator movie, where you had that rough grittiness, you had that violence where the camera was low to the ground and you felt like you were there. Here, the camera's high up, and these ships are over these clearly digital waters, and the fight scene itself is not too that gripping because you already know what's going to happen because you've seen the first Gladiator movie and you know where this movie's going. It just took a while for me to really get gripped into this movie, for me to fulfill that contract between audience and film, right? And I know the first Gladiator movie, had some digital aspects to it. I'm not going to pretend it didn't, but I never really questioned those. Here, it just did feel out of place, and there was that uncanny valley of just the scene this whole time, especially for the first half. That being said, it does get better. As the movie goes on, you get more of those gladiator fights in the Coliseum, in these small rooms that feel dirtier, that feel rougher, that feel more like you're there. And I had a much easier time falling into the story and to the action of the movie once those things got along. It winds up working great by the end of the movie. It did take a while to get there. Those details do wind up rearing their head when you truly feel like you're in the Coliseum with the gladiators. You feel the danger. You're kind of reacting to when some rough stuff happens because you just feel like you're there. I think the movie really did a good job, and when it's firing in all those cylinders of details, it really does work. But this movie isn't all just action. It's not all just gladiators fighting in a pit. The film also repeats the structure in a way of the first one, of having this gladiator story set against the backdrop of political scheming, where the movie honestly fell flat the most for me. So basically, the story goes there are these twin emperors on the throne, that everyone is kind of well aware, hey, these guys are tyrants. No one really likes them, and people are kind of shaky. So there's some unrest resulting throughout Rome and its leaders, right? This political story is mainly seen through the eyes of Pedro Pascal's character and through Denzel Washington's character. Russell Crowe's Maximus in the original Gladiator bore all this weight. He bore the emotional weight of the film as well as the political weight, because he was this general who was betrayed and he was set to be the heir to the throne, and all of that was on him. So he carried that whole plot forward, no matter if it took the emotional route or the political route. But in Gladiator 2, that story is divided amongst like 4 different characters, meaning it's kind of hard for us to fully hop on the support train for its protagonist. Eventually, he just kind of accepts his role in this plot, and that's the movie's way of tying him into this overarching structure. But by the time he accepts it, we in the audience don't really go along with him. It honestly felt like whiplash watching the movie. Like, okay, he's here because he wants revenge for his murdered wife and what happened to his city. But, oh, okay, now I guess he's just along for this plot to overthrow Rome or whatever. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel cohesive. And as a result, it was just kind of hard to get along the train of the plot this whole time. That being said, there are moments, quite a few in fact, where the stars do align, where the emotional drive of the movie, the emotional drive of this gladiator and his revenge intersects with the larger political story as a whole. And it feels really good to watch in those moments. By far, the best parts of this movie aren't even just the fights. It's when those stars align so that our protagonist feels like the center of it all, and he's driving this forward like Russell Crowe did in the first one. Overall, Gladiator 2 is a movie I had occasional fun with, even if it didn't grip me. The fight scenes can be a cool spectacle, the performances are great, and when the movie gets its ducks in a row, the film really shines. But the division of its story elements amongst its characters mean that its leading man feels like he's in the back seat of this car for half of the movie. And the approach to some of the earlier fight scenes, particularly with the wonky CGI, took me out of the battlefield in a way I really don't think it should have. The movie does get back on track in its second half with some truly stand-up moments that make you say, okay, I get why Ridley Scott felt like this story needed to be told. For my rating, I'm going to say, yeah, this movie is worth seeing in a theater. If you want to maximize the spectacle it offers, I saw it personally in an IMAX theater, and I had a really good time watching some of its bigger battles and its more up close and personal Coliseum fight scenes. But in terms of overall quality, this one is maybe a wait to see it at home. But what did you think? Leave a comment down below, subscribe for more upcoming movie talks over a cup of coffee, and I'll see you next time.